Hey guys, it's Joey, and this video is going to be called Yes, All People. We're actually going to be discussing the fallout, the reactions of different people in reaction to the situation with Elliot Rodgers, who's been in the news. He went on a killing spree after posting hate-filled videos on YouTube, particularly towards women. In those videos he also sort of attacked what he felt as the stereotypical male role model that he saw as threatening and vile, and in his messages he was quite misogynistic. And the fallout from this has been really interesting to see the way that different people react. Sadly, some of it is not so nice, and I thought we would talk a little bit about the fallout, the reactions and things that have happened since, and then the reactions to those things, because I think that's very telling of society in general and something that I really think we should have a discussion about. So the Yes All Women has sort of been an internet reaction, hashtag Yes All Women, has been an internet reaction to this situation and tragedy that occurred, whereby women have discussed being sexually abused or sexually discriminated against because they are women. There was then backlash, of course, to that, saying hashtag not all men, that men felt attacked by women standing up and talking about them having encounters of sexual abuse or discrimination or harassment, by saying, you know, not all men do this, not all men are horrible, and we are getting into blame gaming of all men. This is why I want to call this video Yes, All People, because I do want to address the fact that rather than it being addressed that men are also the victims of sexual and harassment and abuse, the reaction to the hashtag all women is like, not all men do this. Well, no, not all men do this. And I saw a very interesting response to this, which was, I've given you a bowl of M&Ms and 10% of them are poisoned. Go ahead and eat from the whole bowl. And I was like, oh dear, that's going to cause some interesting reactions. But I think what's more important to discuss is the fact that where is the reaction that men go through this too? That people, regardless of gender, are discriminated against, and these stereotypes come into being, and they are harmful. And then we're all nitpicking apart why this individual, Elliot Rodgers, went on a killing spree. And I'm going to say first and foremost that blaming one element to me seems simplifying, and I don't know what the proper word is. It's not giving proper weight to the fact that a combination of all these factors probably came into play, and that we as outside observers, voyeurs even, don't really fully understand it because we are not him. And it's interesting for the human scramble and the media scramble for human understanding and media interpretation. And we've had people blame, play the blame game. So there have been discussions about the fact that he was clearly a misogynist. He frequented websites and things to do with the Manhood Academy, which is sort of, apparently, I don't need to be reading stuff about. I read some of the quotes from them, but I'm not going on their main pages and things. I'm not supporting that. About how, you know, being violent towards women, that all women treat men like crap, and all women deserve I don't know, abuse basically. And he was frequenting those sites. So there are discussions about misogyny and hatred against women. And then there are discussions about him having poor mental health and that he'd been in and out of different therapies. He'd been recommended to be on drugs and he refused to take them. And then you have other people saying that his mental health thing is being brought into it because people can't stand to talk about misogyny against women. And then you have other people saying you really shouldn't be like throwing all this, blowing up the sort of mental health issue, because there are a lot of people who suffer with mental health issues who never harm a soul, and it's sort of tarring everybody with the same brush. And then we have people discussing the sort of, why was he even allowed to have access to firearms if he was mentally unstable? This is a government issue as well. And of course, the minute it becomes a government issue, we have media dissent. I think personally, and I don't think this really matters to my discussion at all, but it is going to be a combination of all factors, as well as white middle, they say middle class, but I mean, as a son of a director, surely he would have been further up than that, but privilege, the expectation of everything being given to you, and there are people who have discussed that already. I'm not going to go into that at length, although I think that definitely, the sense of entitlement thing definitely comes into play. And as I said, as part of one of all of these factors, he clearly had misogyny there against women, otherwise he wouldn't be frequenting websites like that. He wouldn't have made statements calling all sorority women blonde sluts, and he was going to punish them for not sleeping with him and this, that and the other. And the sense of entitlement definitely was there. And there's something else as well that I find deeply upsetting, is the idea that young men have to be graded in terms of worth on how many people they have slept with. And that's the flip side, which, you know, we don't tend to talk about. And I actually spoke a little bit about this in my Masculine Morrigan video, that the double standard that exists within society, that men are expected to go out there and sleep around and do whatever they do, and all sorts of weird justifications for it are given. And I'm going to talk about that in a sec. Versus women, that if they sleep around, well then there's not. And the double standard gender role nonsense that goes on within our society, that is real. And I have had much experience with it, both for myself and then in society and hearing experiences of other things. I am going to say, before I get into that, that I do support and did support on Facebook the Yes All Women notion. And I'm going to read out what I put for people on a wider scale than who are just on my Facebook, as well as the follow-up to why I said it, and then discuss it in a little bit thing. But I really want to address this in equal sort of standing, because I understand that some men are going to feel got at for merely being men by some of the stuff that gets said. And personally, I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think that we should be looking at the fact that men do get sexually abused, men do get raped, men are the victims of domestic violence at the hands of women and at the hands of other men. And that there is, you often sort of get domestic violence and sexual abuse being thrown out in just straight relationships, and it's not just straight relationships, it's all relationships, and there is problems of that variety in all relationships. So I want to cover that really, really strongly, how I feel about this, because last time I discussed anything like this, I got comments about how I must be a man-hater, and honestly, if you knew me, then no, I really don't. I have easier time making friendships with men than I do with women. And is there anything else I want to cover before we talk about that sexual inequality and stereotyping growing up? I think if I remember, because I don't have this written down, I just wanted to talk. If I remember, I'll say it. So growing up, I came across this sexual double standard a lot, and I have seen it even more recently, and it's, you know, men are measured in terms of how many women they've slept with, and women, if you slept with a load of men, well, you're used goods, you're damaged, there's something wrong with you. There's a little bit of a problem in this dynamic, and this dynamic I think even exists to divide, to stop people coming together and really, you know, fighting against things that need to be fought. Seeing the overall picture, seeing that there is control going on from higher up, if you ask me. Now, there's a lot of business that rides on these stereotypes, and you know, it's, and the sad thing is as well as telling women that, you know, if they sleep with too many men they're damaged, there's also this whole objectifying, and I've seen this within reactions to women who have been sexually abused, which has been in the limelight because of the Yes All Women thing, which I decided to take part of, and I was looking at the reactions to it. And I will get to the guy stuff, I promise, it's coming. I saw someone saying, you know, oh, I really detest the notion that when we talk about, you know, rape victims or abuse victims or even, you know, sexually harassed victims, you see the idea that it's somebody's sister, it's somebody's mother, it's somebody's wife. How about they're somebody? And that's it, you know? They don't deserve any of this whatsoever. And I thought that was really powerful, because you do see a lot of that. What if it happened to your... And on one level it's people trying to get people to think about these as individuals, but in another way it's removing the individuality of the person who is being abused, by saying, you know, they belong to someone else. And there is an element of that going through a vein of all of it, like women being treated like, I'm talking about women right now, women being treated like objects, and that they belong, and that this entitlement comes in, that men deserve them, and only these men with, and they're like glorified accessories to these men that is portrayed in the media, and that this Elliot Rodgers was going on about as being, you know, guys that are jerks and things like that. And I've seen it even within my lifetime, like with guys going, oh well, women all want this type of man, tall, dark and handsome. And growing up, that's what I wanted to say as well. Growing up, I had a type that I found physically attractive. Blonde, geeks. And the geek stereotype for men has actually come under fire because of this, and I'm like, oh god. Because like if more men were the proper stereotype rather than this geeky stereotype, then this would never happen. Whatever. I have known a lot. Not that. It's sad that I have to even say that now, isn't it? I've known a lot of guys throughout my life who've been geeky men, and most of them have had hearts of gold. Not all of them. Some of them are dickheads. Excuse the French. Sorry, that's... excuse the language. Excuse the French is my grandma, and she's been hovering around a lot recently. And the geek stereotype for men has come under fire because of this thing. So the idea, first and foremost, that women only have one type of guy is portrayed by the media as being the male archetype of perfection. And a lot of women, a lot of realistic women, we all want different things. We're individuals. And I'm sure the same goes for men, because you get these female archetypes of, you know, what is beautiful is. And a lot of men don't really want that. They figure out what they want, and hopefully women do the same. Now, there are going to be people who follow what the media says and does because they haven't learned to think for themselves and they're afraid. And that's going to happen in all societies. It's going to happen with some people. It doesn't mean that you are unable to access feelings of love or sexuality with anybody. So yeah, there's that. There's, you know, and then there is the geek stereotype for men coming under scrutiny all of a sudden. Now, the geek stereotype for men sort of got really, really trendy 5-10 years ago. It was really trendy when it was in all the high fashion magazines and everything as well. And then it kind of eased off a bit. And I don't really study the sort of archetypes of fashionable role models for men anymore, although there is a level of this. There are two. There's the whole clean cut type thing, and then there's you are only as good as how much money you have, how much stuff you own, how powerful you are, and how many women will sleep with you. And it kind of undermines a lot of substance within yourself. Like, it matters who you are as a human being. It matters how you treat people. It matters how you talk to people. It matters more about who you are as an individual than what you possess. And you've got to stop thinking of things, in my opinion, we all have to stop thinking about things we possess in terms of dictating who we are, because I think this is a real problem that then sort of jabs into this, because we then objectify the opposite sex. Oh, I have to, and women do it too, and men do it too, and you know, oh, I have to have this kind of partner who earns this kind of money, who has this kind of car, who has this kind of body. And we lose sight, if we go down that road, we lose sight of people as people. And that's where love actually lies, is in the connection between people. I've talked to a lot of women about over the years of my life, and a lot of women, like, the first thing they say they really want is a sense of humour. That's one of the main things that I really need, is someone I can have a joke and a laugh with. Discussion, honesty, things of that nature. And those aren't being portrayed openly as being strong qualities within men or women. I've even seen stereotypes saying, you know, only women who are ugly have a personality because they have to, and I find that horrendous. And as I said, growing up, I came into contact with both of these ideas of women being promiscuous, being damaged, and men being encouraged to think of themselves in terms of how many people they'd slept with. Now, I've heard this argument more than once, and every time I hear it, I'm like, are you serious? And they try and pass this off as a science, right? That the male biology means that they as cavemen would have wanted to sleep around and spread their seed, and a woman would have wanted to hold on to one guy to protect her young. Don't know if you realised we've evolved since then. If that even was the case, because most of the people who are talking this nonsense have probably never studied cavemen or history or anything of the like. It's just a convenient supposed scientific fact they can throw in there. A bit like statistics get thrown around. We are going to touch on statistics because I think it's important to mention one element of it, but I'm going to talk about the problem with statistics as well. That's nonsense. It's just nonsense. And like saying that men in modern society should revert back to being cavemen is taking away from the evolutionary rights of men. It's saying that men's intellect is base. And I find that really offensive on the behalf of men. Like, you know, you're going to say that men should act like cavemen, that they shouldn't be an evolved guy, that they shouldn't seek out deep, meaningful relationships with one individual because they should go back to their cavemen biology. Grow up. I mean, it's excuses. It's just excuses to behave badly, to cheat, to mess around, to sleep around. And the fact that people feel the need, they have to do this, is kind of sad. Like, you know, I've seen men think that they are being measured on a scale of how many women they've slept with. I'm a stud if I've slept with so many women because I know what I'm doing, therefore, I don't know. Therefore I'm great, I don't know. It's nonsense. And I've said this before, and I will say it again. The line from my childhood that I heard from more than one parent regarding their children: boys will be boys. That is an excuse used not only in the mistreatment of girlfriends, like cheating wise, it's also, I've heard it used in terms of, you know, rape cases. And the fact that women are judged in rape cases by what they were wearing. That's been in the media a lot recently, like sort of trying to get people to understand that if other things were treated that way, like there's a dialogue going around on Facebook, I don't know if it's accurate or not, or where it's come from, where a police officer and a man who was reporting a mugging have this conversation whereby a guy, the police officer answers to, like, the guy deserved it because he gave away to charity, so people knew he gave away money, so the mugging was therefore his own fault. And the idea is it's synonymous with how rape victims are treated, which was explained to the guy at the end. Again, it's going around on Facebook, so I don't know how accurate it is, but it throws into light these sorts of inequality things going on. And there's also one about a woman who set her, I think it was a woman who set her daughter's rapist on fire, and a lot of the quotes underneath were things of the nature that rape victims suffer. He shouldn't have been wearing flammable clothing and things like that. And whilst it's good that we're raising awareness, and that's the key point to all of this, raising awareness, getting a discussion going, we need to talk about the flip side of everything, you know? We can't be uncaring and unfeeling in general, because otherwise we allow this sort of stuff to continue. And I have seen discussion and debate as well about the fact that we promote a rape culture, and that women are taught that if they dress a certain way they're being provocative and that men can't help themselves. And that sort of ties into two very distinct things that are really revolting. One, that men have no control over themselves is completely insulting to men. And two, that women should be dressing not to get raped. Rape isn't about sex, and that's really got lost. It's about power, it's about humiliation. It's about abuse and hurting someone every way you can. It's an attack, it's a sexual attack, it's an emotional attack, it's a mental attack. And the suffering of men and women at the hands of sexual abuse, which has come up in light of this misogyny element from the Elliot Rodgers case, is not being discussed, I don't think, equally. Now, I said about statistics, so we're going to throw that here. I've seen the statistic that 1 in 3 women has suffered from sexual abuse in their lifetime thrown around, and then the counter one was 1 in 6 men. And I don't know how accurate these are for official statistics, But I do know the problems with statistics being that there's an iceberg factor, there's so much unreported stuff. That terrible male stereotype comes in with reporting crime, particularly crimes of a sexual nature, that you're somehow less of a man if you've been sexually attacked. Nothing can be further from the truth, and stuff like that is what abusers play on to stop themselves getting reported so they can carry on hurting people. The idea that women somehow deserved to be sexually abused or attacked. We've discussed that already a little bit, and that comes into play with statistics. When I was studying, you know, at sociology at A-level, we did some of this, and I've looked into it here and there again since, and a lot of the judges would demand to know what a woman had been wearing, how much she'd been drinking, how many sexual partners she'd had. And the fact of it is that none of that is relevant whatsoever, because it's not the victim's fault. Period. The end. I think that's probably a good place for me to share what I shared on Facebook and why I'm doing this video and why I shared the Yes All Women quote. So the Yes All Women quote on Facebook or on the internet in general is to share women's tales of sexual abuse or harassment. And I shared this, so this is going to be pretty serious, heavy stuff, so I'm sorry and all, but if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that it matters. And it will matter if my iPad didn't crash as I was about to read it. That would be fantastic. Technology at its best. I hate this thing. Right. Come on, iPad. The people are waiting. Honestly, technology. Sorry about this, folks. Put it on the Facebook rather than write it down because I thought that would be a better idea. Can but try. Technology. Swear to goodness. Right, okay, I'm going to discuss the Yes All Women project while we try and get this to work. The Yes All Women project was announced as sort of a countermeasure to the misogyny that was regarded as being put on the internet by Elliot Rodgers and people who he was reading their websites, like who we discussed earlier. The idea behind it originally was that women from all over the world were reaching out and saying that yes, they had been victims of harassment, abuse, sexual discrimination. And the volume of it was designed to basically raise awareness. There we go. Thank you. And there's been some horrible reactions to women raising awareness, I swear. So this is mine. Because growing up, I was the victim of sexual abuse at the hands of my father. Because I was too afraid to tell my mother, knowing she would blame me. Because later, when she found out, my mother chose to side with the man who had sexually abused her daughters. Because age 12, I looked age 18 and constantly had men making sexual reference, especially to my large breasts. When I was 13, a man in a car pulled over and asked me how old I was. Because I had a boyfriend who bullied me into sex for the first time. Because he slept around with other women who told me it was all my fault for being frigid. Yes, all women. So the first part I've discussed publicly before, because I think it matters. Oh, get lost then, iPad, honestly. And the second part I haven't. We're going to discuss that in a second. But I was going to read you my second comment to that about why I shared that originally, and iPad won't work, so I'm just going to tell you as much as I can remember exactly what I said. I shared it not because, you know, I had some comments about you know, you'll survive and you think, and I don't need pity. I don't even want pity, so please don't leave it. I shared it and I said, you know, I'm strong now, I'm a warrior now, but I think it's incredibly important not to allow anybody to suffer in silence. And things of this nature, the Yes All Women project is initially designed to raise awareness that people are going through it. And because it was Yes All Women, then there's a backlash of not all men, and that's kind of missing the point. No, not all men are going to be abusers of women. And men are objectified and abused themselves, which is the really more important thing we should be raising awareness for if we, you know, want a counterbalance to Yes All Women. And that's why we're calling this Yes All People, because men deserve to have their voice heard too, and realise that abuse, no matter whom it was by and not whom it was to, should be allowed to go on in silence. I shared it not for me, but for other people to say, you know, I've been through that. Women in the world have been through that. Let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's have a dialogue. And I said it on that, and you know, that the first major boyfriend I ever had tried to and succeeded in bullying me into having a sexual relationship with him. And I tried to tell my mother, and my mother told me that he was a charming young boy, and she didn't believe me. And I had other women who the guy was also cheating. Like, that was one of his ways of, you know, well, you won't sleep with me, so I'm going to sleep with everything else that moves. And the girls, actually, some of them got in contact with me and were like, it told me it was my for being frigid. And, you know, I was young. I was dating him on and off from the age I was 13. I didn't sleep with him until I was of age. But for many, many years I just wouldn't talk about it, because he, as far as I was concerned in my mind, he wasn't my first, because he bullied me into it. Constant pestering and things like that. But the reactions from women were actually worse. And this has been true of a lot of my experiences, that some of the reactions from women are horrendous. Like, women don't seem to react, some women don't tend to react very well to crimes against women, and some women promote the idea that she must have deserved it in some way. And I don't know whether that's bought into, or it's fear, or it's been controlled by men. I have no idea why women do this to other women. I mean, my mother's a prime example. If a guy says it, then it's right, and she'll follow it, and she'll do whatever it takes. But women standing up for themselves, she's not pleasant about it. So yeah, I had some really terrible reactions from women. I had women tell me they didn't believe me about this guy when I was a teenager. Oh, I didn't believe you until I saw him like trying to get into somebody else's pants. That's one. And that stayed with me for a long time. You didn't believe me that I was going through something until you saw him doing it with someone else. Yeah. I thought it was you being paranoid, you being jealous. Okay. So like I said, it can be really, really damaging that, you know, we put these sort of rules on people. You know, you're only a guy if you slept with this many women. No! You date a girl, you've only dated one girl, you marry that girl, you've only ever slept with that girl, you're happy, you're in love, good for you. you've slept with 2 or 3 women and you don't really want to sleep with anyone else until you found the love of your life. Good for you. Be true to who you are as a human being. Whether you're male, whether you're female, and your own sexuality, embrace that and do what you feel is right. And that, of course, is the problem, you know, what is right. So, So we talked about stereotypes, we've talked about problems with statistics. I could probably go into a lot more depth about that, but this video is probably going to be really long as it is, so. So we're going to finish, actually, with a quote from the newly passed Maya Angelou. And I think I shared this in her honour the other day. But I think it really, really sums up how I feel about this situation. Hate. It has caused a lot of problems in the world, but it has not solved one yet. If we would all just stop looking at who we're blaming and try and stop these situations coming about in the first place by having real dialogues with both men and women, teaching men and women what it really means to love and care for one another rather than this self-entitled sexual role list of what men and women should be in this horrifically damaging way. Yeah. And we are going to finish off with me saying this is not just for women, this is for guys too. Many blessings.